What if the world's two greatest powers, the United States and China, went to war? Who would win? Many assume America, with its global dominance and unmatched military spending, could easily defeat China, but the reality might shock you. In this video, we're breaking down why the United States cannot win a war against China, no matter how powerful it seems. From geography to technology, alliances, and economics, we'll reveal the hidden truths that make this confrontation unwinnable for Washington. Stay tuned because number one will change how you see the future of global power forever. 1. Geography is China's ultimate. In any war, geography is not just background, it's the silent force that shapes every battle. And when it comes to a US-China war, geography tilts the balance dramatically in Beijing's favor. Let's break it down. The United States military machine is used to projecting power globally. It has bases in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Pacific. But here's the catch. If America wants to fight China, it has to fight on China's doorstep, thousands of miles away from its own mainland. China, on the other hand, would be defending its home turf. Its naval and air bases line the entire eastern seaboard. The South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, and East China Sea are all within a tight radius of mainland China. That means Chinese jets, submarines, and missiles can strike in hours or even minutes, while the US needs weeks just to position forces. Think about this. A US aircraft carrier leaving San Diego would need almost 3 weeks to sail across the Pacific to Taiwan. By the time it gets there, China could have already deployed thousands of troops, launched missile strikes, and even secured Taiwan's major cities. America would always be playing catch-up. Then comes the issue of supply chains. Modern militaries run on fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and food. For the US, every gallon of fuel and every missile would have to travel across the Pacific. Supply lines stretching over 7,000 miles are vulnerable to disruption by Chinese submarines, long-range missiles, and cyber attacks. One successful strike on an American logistics hub could cripple an entire operation. Now let's look at China's fortress strategy. Over the past decade, Beijing has built a web of artificial islands in the South China Sea, complete with runways, radar systems, and missile launchers. These islands act like unsinkable aircraft carriers, extending China's reach deep into the Pacific. Every US plane or ship that enters the region would be under constant surveillance and missile threat. And here's something most people forget. The first island chain. This is the string of islands running from Japan through Taiwan, the Philippines, and down to Malaysia. China's military strategy revolves around controlling this chain, turning it into a natural barrier against US intervention. Beyond it lies the second island chain, which extends to Guam, home to major US bases. If war breaks out, Beijing will try to lock America out of the first island chain entirely, trapping US forces far from the battlefield. Geography also affects air superiority. US jets would need to fly from distant bases in Guam, Okinawa, or even aircraft carriers. Chinese fighters, on the other hand, can launch directly from mainland air bases, refuel faster, and rotate fresh squadrons at will. This means US pilots would face fatigue and limited time in combat zones, while Chinese pilots could dominate with shorter flight times. And let's not forget geography's ultimate advantage, public support. For China, a war fought at home is a war for survival. For the US, it's a war fought across the ocean, far away from American soil. That difference in geography also translates into a difference in national will. In short, geography makes China almost unbeatable in a regional war. The US might dominate the Atlantic or Middle East, but in East Asia, the battlefield itself is China's strongest ally. 2. China's anti-access/area denial, a 2/AD strategy. The US military relies heavily on aircraft carriers, the symbols of American power, but China has spent decades developing weapons specifically designed to sink them. China's DF-21D and DF-26 carrier killer missiles can strike moving US carriers from over 1,500 miles away. With hypersonic speed and advanced tracking, these missiles make America's billion-dollar ships floating targets. In a war scenario, the US Navy would struggle to even get close enough to Chinese shores to project power. Washington would be fighting blind, while Beijing controls the battlefield. 3. The size of China's military. Most people don't realize this, but China has the largest standing military in the world. With over 2 million active soldiers backed by modern tanks, artillery, and drones, China can outnumber American forces in any Asian conflict. And it doesn't stop there. The People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, has now surpassed the US Navy in sheer number of warships. While America still has more tonnage and advanced carriers, China's rapidly growing fleet is built for regional dominance. Simply put, The US can't bring enough troops and ships to Asia fast enough to overpower China's numerical advantage. 4. Taiwan, the flashpoint of doom. If a war breaks out, it will likely be over Taiwan. The US has pledged to defend it, but China sees Taiwan as non-negotiable. Here's the problem. Taiwan is only 100 miles from mainland China, but it's nearly 7,000 miles from Washington, D.C. If China launches an invasion, the US would need weeks to deploy forces. By the time America responds, Taiwan could already be under Chinese control. The short distance gives Beijing overwhelming tactical superiority. The US would be fighting against time, terrain, and an enemy determined to fight to the last soldier. 5. America's economy is its weak spot. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with money. And while the US has a huge defense budget, it is also drowning in $35 trillion of debt. China, on the other hand, holds over $800 billion in US Treasury bonds and controls massive parts of global supply chains. If a war breaks out, Beijing could unleash economic warfare, cutting off rare earth minerals, disrupting supply chains, and collapsing American industries overnight. A long war with China wouldn't just drain the Pentagon, it could cripple the entire US economy. 6. China's hypersonic edge. In modern warfare, speed is everything, and China is racing ahead in hypersonic weapons, missiles that travel more than 5 times the speed of sound and are nearly impossible to intercept. While the US is still testing its hypersonic programs, China has already deployed them. In 2021, China shocked US intelligence by successfully launching a hypersonic glide vehicle that circled the globe before striking its target. If war breaks out, America's traditional missile defense systems will be outdated overnight, leaving its bases and carriers vulnerable to strikes it can't stop. 7. Nuclear deterrence. Let's not forget, the US and China are both nuclear powers. While America has more warheads, China has enough to guarantee mutually assured destruction, MAD. This means the US cannot risk a full-scale war without risking nuclear retaliation. Even if America wins conventionally, the cost could be catastrophic. In the nuclear age, there are no real winners, only survivors. 8. America's alliance problem. The US often relies on alliances like NATO, Japan, and South Korea to strengthen its position. But, in a war with China, not all allies may step in. Europe is dependent on China for trade, and many Asian countries fear Chinese retaliation. While Japan and Australia might assist, others would likely stay neutral. China, meanwhile, has been building strong ties with Russia, Iran, and developing nations. A US-China war could easily become a global conflict, isolating Washington instead of strengthening it. 9. The cyber battlefield. Modern wars won't just be fought with tanks and jets, they'll be fought in cyberspace, and China has one of the most advanced cyber armies in the world. Imagine this. Before a single shot is fired, Chinese hackers could shut down US satellites, disrupt power grids, crash financial markets, and paralyze communication networks. America might have the strongest conventional military, but if its digital backbone is destroyed, it would be fighting blind and crippled. 10. The American public's weak will for war. Finally, war isn't just about weapons, it's about willpower. The US public has grown weary of endless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The idea of sending thousands of soldiers to die in Asia against a nuclear-armed rival would face massive resistance at home. Meanwhile, China's government can mobilize its population with nationalism and strict control. For Beijing, the war would be about sovereignty and survival. For Washington, it would be a distant conflict that most Americans don't want, and that difference in resolve could decide everything. At the end of the day, the United States might be the most powerful military force in history, but China's unique position makes it unbeatable in a direct war. Geography, technology, economics, and political will all tilt the battlefield toward Beijing. This doesn't mean China would win outright, but it means America cannot achieve a decisive victory without risking total destruction. So the real question isn't who would win, but whether the world can avoid this war altogether. Because if it ever begins, there may be no winners, only survivors. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more deep geopolitical analysis, and drop a comment below. Do you think the US and China will ever go to war, or will both powers step back before it's too late?